Hello guys, it's Ryan Ho back with another video. Today I want to review the Shure SRH840A. Now this is one of the best headphones I have ever heard, flat out. And this is a studio headphone, and the thing about the Shure headphone is that the first time I heard the old version of this, the 840, I was really amazed by that headphone. It was tuned very well, and I instantly became one of my favorites. And I was actually thinking about buying that headphone like in December. But then I decided against it because I was like, oh, the headband's kind of ugly. It's kind of an old design. And what do you know? Like a month later, they came out with a new version of the headphone that fixed a lot of the problems I kind of had with the headphone, which was, it was just kind of ugly. And the headband was really wide and big versus this new headband is a lot sleeker, a lot better looking, and it fits really well as well. And overall, I think they did fix a lot of those issues that I had before, and I think they actually made it sound a little better too. So obviously I make YouTube videos, so having really accurate headphones matters a lot, especially if you're editing videos. Obviously it's not as important as people who like make music, but that's kind of one perspective I'll look at this headphone. The other perspective that I want to review this headphone is just like how good is it just listening to music in general, and kind of describe what the sounds like and all of that. Anyways, please like and subscribe down below. It helps my videos out. I'm really trying to hit that 1,000 subscriber mark. I'm like almost there. So if you can please subscribe, that would help a lot. And yeah, let's talk about the build, and then we'll talk about the sound and why this is one of my favorite headphones ever. All right, so this is everything you get inside the box. So you get this protein leather case, I guess soft case, so you can put your headphone in there and kind of protect it from getting scratched. You also get this really long cable that kind of has this kind of rotating fix, so you can kind of rotate this in and it'll lock in, and then this is just a 3.5 millimeter, so it plugs into like your phone or something. And then you get a 1/4 inch adapter, so if you want to plug it up into more serious gear, you can. And like I said, this cable's kind of long, and you're definitely not going to take this mobile because the cable's too long. It'll just drag on the floor, so it's a long cable. But yeah, these are all the accessories. Now let's talk about the build of this headphone. So the build of this headphone is a new headband, right? It's kind of the shining feature. This has this kind of, I guess, protein leather on top with some stitching. It feels nice. And yeah, it's kind of a nice finish. It gives it kind of a premium look to it. Although on the bottom, it kind of has a kind of cloth padding. So I think it's interesting that they didn't use leather, and I'm gonna guess the reason why is if you have a leather pad, over time, it starts peeling, it looks really ugly. I think something like this will last longer and will look more, I guess, better over time because it won't fall apart. And another thing interesting to know about this pad is there's a lot of padding up top, on the very top, but when you move over here, there's not actually, you can see that I can't really push down on it because it's kind of where the hinge goes in. So most of the padding is actually kind of localized between like this area. But it doesn't really matter because this headphone is so light that like I barely even feel it on my head, and I don't really feel uncomfortable with the headband because it's so light that you don't really need much to support its weight, right? Now the hinges and everything about this headphone is basically plastic, so there's not really any metal to be found. So I think the plastic build gives it the lightweightness, so it won't, get tiresome to wear over a long time, but it loses a little bit of that premium feeling and that kind of sturdiness that you would want. But I think that is the trade-off, right, of plastic. These hinges is something that I kind of like have an issue with, only because I think this hinge really rotates way too fast. There are other headphones that kind of don't make noise and they kind of slowly slide. Like this thing rotates way too easily and too quickly, but it's not really an issue when you wear it on your head. But it's worth noting that I just think it moves way too quickly. And then the other thing is these extensions are fine, but I also noticed that they kind of move pretty easily too, but they don't seem to like move when it's on my head, so it's fine, but it's something that I noticed. Now let's talk about the ear pads. These ear pads are really nice, and they're honestly deep enough where my ears doesn't really touch the driver, and it's very comfortable. And there's actually a lot of padding right here too, so even if your ears touch it, you won't really feel like any of that driver because there's nice like material right here. And it's worth noting that like if I take off the pad, you can kind of see the driver in here. It's very like, revealing. You can see the driver. But the interesting part about this ear pad, in my opinion, is that the inside is a cloth feeling, and then on the backside, it's actually a foam. So there's like a lot of dampening in here. And I think that causes this headphone to have like a lot less like emphasized highs that I'll talk about in the sound section. But I actually tried different pads on this that didn't have as thick of the material over here, like foam and cloth. And you got more like highs. And I think I guess the build of the other ear pad, which was this HyperX Cloud Alpha S's ear pads, kind of kept in the bass more, so there was like harder hitting bass too. So it was just interesting because I just had the pads around, so I just swapped it for fun. This headphone really has all the adjustments you need to make it comfortable. So like I said, you can kind of extend the bands, they rotate, they even move like this. So they really kind of mold to shape your head. And because it's light and because there's sufficient padding everywhere, this is pretty much a very, very comfortable headphone, and there's no complaints about that for me. So let's talk about power requirements for this headphone. So this headphone is really easy to drive. You can literally plug into an iPhone, it'll sound good. But I personally tested this with my SMSL SU9 and topping A90, so my $1,000 DAC amp setup, and it sounds really good off of that. So yeah, this thing is really easy. Just plug it up to whatever device you want and it'll work. So what does a Shure 840A sound like? Honestly, it sounds pretty perfect. There's like maybe like one or two little complaints I have about it, but they're really minor complaints. And honestly, it's very accurate and one of the best headphones I've heard, right? So when it comes to the bass, I think it does the bass really, really well. It has a very linear bass, so like the bass and the sub bass are very linear, so it doesn't feel uneven at all. And the other thing that I noticed about the bass is it extends all the way down to the sub bass. So the sub bass, it plays that region very well and it's very prominent. You can kind of hear it, and I feel like it adds a lot to this headphone because I feel like a lot of headphones don't play sub bass very well. So that's really great. And then the other thing is it definitely has like an elevated bass compared to like a neutral like bass, but I think it's like studio accurate bass. So it's really good. You can feel it, and honestly, the bass is really a wonderful part about this headphone. Now the thing is, when you go from the bass to the mid-range, I feel like I detect a little bit of a under-emphasis between the mids and the bass. I feel like it's kind of scooped out a little bit because I feel like male vocalists come across a little less forward, and I feel like female vocals lack a little bit of body, like very tiny, but I think I detect a little bit of like under-emphasis in that area. But a lot of headphones kind of tune their headphones like that, kind of specifically because they don't want the bass to bleed into like the mids or the vocals. So they kind of have a little less emphasis between the bass and the mids. So I do think I detect that for this headphone. Now, when it comes to mid-range and like vocals and like instruments, honestly, they sound absolutely fantastic on this headphone. Everything comes across really clear, very just forward. Like you can just hear everything and everything sounds pretty much how it should. And the only thing is when you start moving up to kind of the treble, I think the treble is very good. The lower treble is like wonderful. Like I said, vocals, female vocals, like they all come across very clear. Nothing sounds harsh at all. But I started detecting like in the highest regions of this headphone, I feel like it's a little bit underemphasized in like the highest treble of this headphone, like all the way up there. I feel like it lacks a little bit of air to it because like I said, this headphone doesn't sound harsh at all. The treble is very well controlled and very detailed. But besides that, overall, this headphone sounds amazing. It's tuned better than most headphones I've ever heard. And it's honestly gonna go up to like my top recommended headphone because it sounds that good. Yeah, I mean, if you want a studio accurate headphone, this is it. If you want a headphone to listen to music, this is also what I would recommend because I feel like it does both really, really well. I mean, it makes sense that the people making the music with this headphone and the people listening to it would sound really good with it, right? Because they're tuned the same, right? If that makes any sense. The type of like resolution you get from this headphone is very, very, very good. I think it's definitely, for its price range, is above average, honestly, if not like number one in its kind of price category. So definitely a win for this headphone. So I actually heard the SR840 before, right? I also heard the old 440 as well as the 1440. And among those three headphones, really the 840 stood out the most to me because 840 had just better bass and it wasn't as like kind of screechy or trebly as the 440 was. I think the 440 treble was kind of a little bit too emphasized, so I didn't really like it that much. The 840 was a lot better headphone. And then going to like the 1440 headphone, I felt like that headphone just kind of has an open back headphone, so the bass is just kind of like non-existent. It was like the bass just kind of just disappeared under it, and the 840 just did that so much better than the 1440 that, like, to me, there's no question that the 840 was the best out of those three. And the same could be said for the 840A, would be better than those as well. In conclusion, this thing is honestly pretty close to a perfect headphone. There's some minor complaints that I've had, right, about like kind of the little bit of the build issues, but honestly, this thing is lightweight, it's comfortable, it sounds really good, it runs off of anything. This headphone does everything right, and I think Shure should be very happy with this headphone. And honestly, it's definitely going to be a #1 recommend for me and for other people that if they ask me what is a good headphone that they want, it's definitely this one. Anyways, please like and subscribe down below. It helps my videos out. I'm trying to hit that 1,000 like I said, so any help would be appreciated. I make tech videos all the time and also headphone reviews, so if you want to see more of that, you definitely want to, like and subscribe so you don't miss out. And I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.